And you're very welcome along to another edition of Tipp Cast. Myself, Shane Brophy of the Nenagh, and joined as ever by Noel Dundon. And this week our special guest is Tipperary Senior Camogie Manager Dennis Kelly. Gents, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane.
Good to have you along. Before we, I suppose, look into the first round of the county championship, Dennis, I'll reflect on the All-Ireland Senior Camogie final last weekend. A win for Galway. I suppose a game that had a bit of controversy and the fallout from it. And I was remarking in my column in the Guardian this week that there was a lot of to and fro over what was said beforehand, even in the build-up, and particularly maybe by the Galway side, and then maybe some of the refereeing decisions. And I was making the case that it was a lot of negative stuff, but it was great publicity. It lasted for a couple of days, and it was great for that couple of days for camogie to be in the forefront, and on top of that, we got a great contest too.
Yeah, it was a great game, and as you say, the camogie was to the forefront. I suppose a few interviews after the game and things like that, after the heat of the battle, it was a surprise victory for Galway. But it was, I suppose, similar to Tip in the hurling. Cork went in hot favourites again and probably failed to live up to their expectations, and I think Galway used Tip as a template maybe a little bit as well, looking back at it, just how they set up and things like that. But no, it was a great game. A few decisions, as always. There's always going to be decisions that are up for debate. And Cork got the goal last year. That was the ghost goal. That should have been really a free out. So they got away with one last year. So I suppose it was we had a payback from Galway this year that they got the nod. But no, real intense game. And, Justin Heffernan, he got a bit of slack for some of the frees he missed, but generally he let the play go, and that's what you want to see. It creates a better spectacle, right? The charging rule probably needs to be changed, as we've spoke about for a while. But after that, it's a real good, advertisement for the game. And, the last thing you want to be doing is looking at two free takers hitting free after free. So, it was a really good game to watch. And, as we were saying before we got on camera there, the more games you have like that, the more of an audience you will captivate.
Yeah, I know, Dennis, I suppose, that was I thought from, the middle of the last decade, there was a couple of finals, I think Cork and Kilkenny, where it was nearly a free fest, and that was probably under the old rules where nearly physicality wasn't allowed. Now, that has been changed where a certain amount of it is allowed, but I just wonder, I know there definitely was a case that the referee last weekend, he more or less decided, I'm letting you play. And it was a lot like the men's game. And I think a lot of the reason why maybe people don't go to more camogie matches is the pace of it is slower. It's just genetics, male versus female. But if you allow the girls to express their physicality, and these girls are putting in a lot of the same gym work as the boys, they're physically at this level are very strong. If you allow them to express themselves fully, I think a lot more people will go to games. It's like if the intensity level like that, if they're going to see that more often than not.
Yeah, look, the standard has risen year on year. The quality of camogie, it's on the rise, definitely. And, the physicality adds to the whole spectacle and get the crowd involved. I suppose the other side of it is a free. Yeah. I don't know whether it's inside the scoring range that if it's a free, you give a free. Because, if you're a manager, it is a bit of a killer, if you don't get one, a scoreable free or something, then it goes down the other end and the other team get the free. So that's the other side of it. And you can see where Cork are coming from too. There's an element of, drawing frees in camogie as well. Certain teams are better at it than others. And that unfortunately is in a lot of games. But it's like the last free that's Cork questioned that. And I suppose, that's sometimes people get a little touch and they kind of go down that bit heavier and the referee buys into it. So look at it, that's the nature of the game, and it's up to the referee to decide. But if a lot of the times you see in matches in the last few minutes of a game, the referee, he doesn't give a free either way and lets them fight it out. But in this case, there was one free for Galway. Cork could have got one a few seconds earlier, and that's, I'd say, where the frustration came from.
Yeah, I don't know your thoughts on it. I just thought there was a physicality in it that while it was fair, like there were some big hits in the match, and the ref let them go. Like a lot of refs, and within the camogie rules, would have gone by the rule book, said that's a bit too much. But like if you're allowing physicality and the players know that it's there and it's fair and it's legal and it's not dangerous, like I think you get a lot more people either paying through the gates or watching, and I think that's the next step of getting more people, I suppose, focused on the game and getting more bums and seats and more eyes watching it.
Yeah, I suppose the more exciting it can be, Shane, the better. And physicality definitely brings excitement. And, just as you were talking there, one thing that struck me was, after the All-Ireland hurling final every year, we hear this thing about where people in the UK who have never seen a GA match before, an All-Ireland final, and they log on to it to see it on BBC or whatever, and they're in ecstasies over the speed of the game and the physicality of the game and all the rest of it. And you'd love to know what their reaction would be to seeing a camogie All-Ireland final as well, because camogie obviously would be that little bit less physical maybe and it's slow paced in comparison to hurling, but would be still far faster than the likes of what they would be looking at in the UK in soccer and that type of thing, and I think people will probably be blown away by camogie as well, particularly over the last number of years, because the standard has just gone through the roof.
Yeah, I suppose just to wrap up on the camogie, I suppose then is have Cork and Galway sort of brought that element to it, like they seem to have taken it to another level, and that's maybe where the likes of Tipp, Waterford, and maybe Kilkenny probably have a bit of catching up to do. Is that where the sort of the gap has developed between Cork and Galway and the rest over the last year or two?
Yeah, physicality is a big thing, and I suppose age profile as well is another huge one. A lot of them Galway girls would have been on losing teams in like 2021, 22 along there, and they've stuck with it. And sometimes it's hard to keep your panel together for different reasons, but definitely young girls coming in out of minor, no matter how good they are, it's going to take a few years to get that physicality and get all that gym work under the belt, that they're strong enough and physical enough, for the majority anyway, so it's definitely the age factor does help as well. I know we've been building a nice panel in Tipp, but again, you're losing a few off the top, and there's different reasons for people not being able to stick with it, and it's a huge commitment as well. So there's different reasons for it, but definitely both of those teams, they're the two most physical teams in the country, and they're well seasoned teams, I suppose, and that does help.
Yeah, I was making the point that the 2000 Tipperary team or the Jubilee team last Sunday, the team that's what Claire Grogan at 14 made her first final appearance, and I said to himself, if that, I know that rule has been done away with where there's an age limit now, but if it was still applied now, there's no way you could put a 14-year-old in that. They just wouldn't be safe, like the physicality there is in camogie now.
You'd definitely don't if you did it now.
Absolutely. God, there were great days, and sure, they'll be back up again there next year for the 3 in a row, and please God, Tipp will be up there next year. Now we go to, I suppose, the primary focus is the county championship. I got underway last weekend. Some cracking hurling across the 3 main grades. Fabulous weather, big crowds. I suppose, Noel, what was your takeaway? What was the game that probably stood out for you more than the others?
Well, I was at the Holycross Tumivara game, Shane, and I thought that was a fantastic game to start off the county championship. It was a brilliant game of hurling, end-to-end hurling, really impressive from Holycross in the first half. Tumivara came back really, really strong at him in the second half, and they still managed to sort of stave off the comeback. I've been saying to a few people, it actually reminded me in lots of ways of the Tipp Clare game in the Munster Championship, where Tipp had a big lead up and Clare came back at him. But Tipperary, just like Holycross last Saturday, just managed to get a couple of points every time just to stem that tide a little bit and keep the scoreboard ticking over for themselves. And that was a Holycross team without Brian O'Mara, who's out sort of long term with that hamstring injury, and Jim Ryan, the Tipp under 20 centre back, was also out with a hamstring injury. So it was a great game of hurling. Darren McCarthy was the main man for Toom, banging over points from frees primarily, very, very accurate. though well enough marshalled in general play and open play. I think he might have got 2 from open play, if my memory serves me correctly. But a really good game of hurling, big crowd there. And I suppose the other one that was a standout one really for me was the Drum and Inch Loughmore Castleiney game. Because going on the form of the mid-championship, you would have sort of feared for Drum and Inch, but they turned in a huge shift against their neighbours to come out on just the wrong side of a 1-point defeat, and a really, really good game as well. Good, intense, close game. John McGrath doing something totally unexpected once again, back to the goalkeeper and a point to win the game. So that was a big game. Sarsfields Nenagh, people would say, was a bit of a surprise. I didn't see it that way, being honest. I thought Sarsfields have struggled this year so far, and I think Nenagh have added a little bit more to their side this year. I think Nenagh could well be a dark horse if they can keep themselves in the kind of form that they've been showing.
So Dennis, we might just go back to the Holycross Toom game, and we'll go in order of the groups. It was a big win for Holycross. I suppose they're an up and coming team, and particularly to do it without 2 of their key defensive pillars. You're probably saying two of their 3 half-backs if they were picking putting their full team out, and for them to come through that, and I suppose withstanding that Toom comeback, that's in terms of the development with, I suppose, probably a team that have a young average age is a huge boon to them.
Yeah, it's a huge statement from Holycross because, there was a feeling there at one stage coming down the home stretch that was a deja vu for them again. And other years, even with those kind of guys you've spoken about that are missing, they would have maybe faltered at the end. But no, they tagged on the couple of scores that were vital, at the vital stage there. Toom did press them hard. But again, I suppose they got too much of a head start there. Toom were slow out of the blocks. They've historically maybe been a bit slow in certain games, and just couldn't peg it back. Dara was held fairly well from play, and the supporting cast then weren't maybe up to scratch. Conor O'Mara did come in and play fairly well, and unfortunately he got a red at the end. But they pressed them hard, but no, they were able to tag on them few points and get the job done. Very impressed their style of play, and you could see it definitely. Aidan Stakelum is back there, and Brendan Ryan, and you could definitely see his style on the team. As far as I could see, the ball going in was excellent, and puck outs were very good, and there was a lot of good organisation, amongst them. So definitely they've got the monkey off their back now, getting the first win. Right, they'll need to back it up, but they could be definitely trouble for someone down the tracks.
Yeah, I suppose, Dennis, any concern from a Toom point of view that I think is it less than half of their scores were from play? They scored 28 points, but 15 of them from frees, or was that just down maybe to Holycross thinking, okay, look, we'll concede the free, but not the goal? Was there an element of that, or would there be a concern that, even like you mentioned, Conor O'Mara out, he scored 3 off the bench? I think he hit 2 wides and assisted for 1. He was very, very busy. That's a big loss for the next game against Clonoulty.
Yeah, I suppose you'd have a certain concern there. Again, maybe the forward line weren't fired at all cylinders. I think around the middle of the field, definitely Holycross were big time on top. Young Gould there in the middle of the field, that was excellent, especially in the first half. And Mikey Nelly there up front. There was lads stepping up that hadn't kind of stepped up before, and that's what Holycross needed. I suppose then. Dara Woods came good there as well as the match went on, but there was stairs everywhere for Holycross. But yeah, look, it'd be a slight concern. But I think definitely knowing Ken and the lads, they'll have a look at that, look back at the match. They've looked back at it already, probably reviewed it with the boys, and they'll be coming up with a plan to attack. Clonoulty the next day. That definitely, you're probably looking at the match-up between Darren McCarthy and Doyle again the next day. That'll be worth paying in alone to see that, to see how that goes and where they operate. But you definitely see the two of them matching up in that game. So there's going to be mouth-watering games coming up in the second round as well, and that'll be do or die, with the loser gone out.
Yeah, and I suppose for Holycross, we know they had a strong team last year. Now they have Colin O'Reilly and Tiernan Ryan eligible, and then you look at like Mikey Nally, probably one of the less heralded maybe forwards over the last few years now, and he's going into man of the match. Like the competition they have, even just again their starting team, and hopefully when Brian O'Mara, like Luke O'Mara didn't even start. I think he started in the mid-championship game. Like they have serious options there.
They have Shane. There's a lot of options there. Mikey Nally has come through as a big option for him, and a different type of player. You know, a very physical player, strong man, great man under a ball, and great man to catch a ball. He scored. I think he scored 4 points. Was fouled or involved in the penalty, and was fouled or involved in 5 other scores. So that's a fair contribution from any forward in the game. So it was a really good showing from Mikey. But then, you know, the other side of it too, Shane, is that the last 2 years, Holycross have won the first round of the championship as well and didn't build on it. Got caught last year against your own team, Laura, in the final game of the round robin, having lost to Loughmore. So I think they're fairly conscious of that too this time around, that like, a good start is half the battle, as they say, but there's still half the battle to, in this case, the third of the battle, I suppose, to still play out, like, you know, so they're going to be very conscious of that, I think, this week and next as they get ready for that game with Kiladangan.
Yeah, and that's speaking of Kiladangan, they were 220 to 21 point winners over Clonoulty Rossmore on Sunday. I thought Kiladangan might be a little vulnerable, Dennis, last Sunday, just off the fact that they've had 3 matches in 7 days. I think maybe they'd be a little stale, but like they hit the ground running. Like they were, I'd say it was that first 15 minutes where they had the platform for that victory, even though Clonoulty came back and it was a late goal that pushed the final margin out to 5 points. But Kiladangan always looked in control of that game.
Yeah, they never really looked like they were under too much pressure. Even when Clonoulty closed it to 3, was it, or thereabouts? You know, they still, you were never thinking Kiladangan are going to be beaten here, and they had played like the 3 games in the week previously. But what they were doing through the North Championship is rotating the panel, and I think they're trying to build this panel for later on in the year, and you know, they're getting through the games. I'd be have a slight favour for them at the minute, because they're getting through these games without shooting the lights out. But they're being quite efficient, and you know, they're using their 20 every day to go out. And there's young lads there like Darragh Dwyer coming in, Conor Byrne is on the freeze. There's a nice freshness to him there as well. Sean Hayes is working through the games, and he'll be flying come knockout stages, you'll be expecting.
They probably have probably the best half-back line in the competition in Connors, Flynn and Joe Gallagher. Yeah,
look, at Connors is on fire altogether, and Flynn like as well, and Joe sure is the evergreen Joe. So yeah, they're excellent. I know Connors went to the middle of the field in the second half there, and he was so good there. That might shake up the half back line. Darragh Butler came in, so you'd be with Connors in the middle of the field. I think they'd be even more dangerous. But look, only for Jason Dwyer, really, he pulled off a few good saves that could have been out of sight. And then you'd have to credit Clonoulty for coming back into it once they started playing that running game, and you know, getting the ball off the shoulder and carrying the ball. The direct ball wasn't really working, but when they carried it and it got off the shoulder, they caused a bit of trouble for Kiladangan. So look, Clonoulty will be happy with a certain element of what they saw, but they'll have to improve again, I suppose, for the next day.
Yeah, and I suppose that the Clonoulty, they won't want to be, they do have a preliminary quarter-final ticket in their back pocket, but like they have a tough game with Toomevara up next. You think Toomevara are probably the team under the most pressure next time round, because if they lose, they're I'd say they're as very, very close to being eliminated, like, because they don't have a North Championship in their back pocket. But you don't want to be going into the preliminary quarter final maybe 2, if not 3 defeats. I'd say Clonoulty be disappointed, particularly maybe the first 10 or 15 minutes, when maybe if Clonoulty were Kiladangan were a bit stiff and stale after playing so many matches that they could take advantage of it. But it was Clonoulty who were just the team who were slow out of the blocks.
Yeah, I thought it'd be the other way around, Shane. I thought that Clonoulty would be the ones that would go tearing into this game a little bit like they did in the West final, and they kind of kept their nose in front of Cashel for most of the game all the way along. A bit of a blow to them now as well that Jack Ryan has broken knuckle in that game, so he's going to be out for a while as well for them now, and he's a big loss, big target man up there. Had a tough afternoon the last day on Joe Gallagher. Who's a fair competitor, so he isn't that half back line, but Jack is a big loss to Clonoulty, all right. I'd agree with you. I think they won't want to be going into a preliminary quarter having lost games. That winning is a habit, and most teams want to get into that habit. It doesn't always work out for them like that, but you the fact that they're in the preliminary, I don't think it'll diminish their sort of desire to win games in the county championship, because you in theory you can end up in the county final and still be in relegation as well. That's the reality of the system we have here in Tipp, and nobody wants that, certainly not Clonoulty, Rossmore. So I think that they'll be going really, really hard for the Toomevara game,
Yeah, and I suppose if for something learned from the Clonoulty game so far is that Jason O'Dwyer has been very, very good between the posts, and if there's maybe a guy that's maybe pushing to be maybe got on a Tipp panel, maybe as a third goalie or next in line after Barry Hogan and Rhys Shelley, Jason O'Dwyer is doing his chances no harm at the moment. Moving on to Group 2, Nenagh beat Thurles Sarsfields on Saturday 126-315. I saw most of this game. I'd agree with you, Noel. I didn't see this as a surprise. I just thought Nenagh have done an awful lot of work this year to get this group ready. And okay, they were disappointed to lose in the North quarter final to Kilruane, but Jake Morris only came on at half time in that game, and I always thought that the Thurles game was the one they were really targeting. And look, I thought they were, even when against the Breeze in the first half, and they were disappointed to concede a penalty earlier on, but I thought they were very, very controlled. And when they got the Breeze behind them, I just thought their use of the ball, in contrast to how maybe Thurles used the ball when they had the Breeze behind them, was the key difference in the game, and how they were able to rack up 126.
Yeah, like Shane, I think we've probably been consistently saying it like that the Nenagh team has underachieved. The Nenagh club, I suppose, has underachieved for a number of years, going back the years even, but I think this particular group that they have, Jake was the main man in the forward line for a long time, and if you held Jake, you had a fair old job done with the Nenagh forward line. But now you're adding in the likes of Ben West and Josh Keller, James Mackey, Mikey Heffernan, of course. There's plenty of scores in that forward line, and all the responsibility doesn't necessarily fall on Jake now, in as far as getting the scores is concerned. But there's one thing to have scores; it's another thing to be able to get the ball to them to do the damage. I haven't even mentioned Sam O'Farrell, who had a fine game as well. In the Rag on Saturday afternoon, brilliant game, brought on his form from Tipperary into the club scene as well. So I think Nenagh have a really, really balanced team. But the next game is a big one for them, because you're in a situation where you've won your first round game. You want to try and bring consistency, and that's probably the one word that would have been used to describe Nenagh in recent times. Inconsistent. That they can beat probably any team in the championship in the county, but they could lose to any team in the county as well. So it's going to be a big challenge now for Hugh Maloney as manager to get the boys in the right frame of mind. But from what I've seen, I think they're in a good place.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, Dennis. You'd be thinking that. The big game in the group, probably for maybe Nenagh when the draw was made, was Thurles, and they got the win there. It's the next one, and that's when they could be a little vulnerable, and you have a Cashel team probably with the first game back senior under their belt. Okay, it took them a while to get past Mullinahone, but they've got it now. They'll be able to loosen up a small bit. So that, I think that Cashel contest will be. I think if Nenagh were to come through that, I think you'd be able to say, okay, this is a team that you could say that they've kicked on a bit and can really challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you go back to the Sars Nenagh game, it was right. They played well in the second half, but it came down to that goal from a Paddy McCormick mistake that really they started to hurl rightly. Then it was in the balance up to that. And then they got confidence out of that, getting that goal. It just came at the right time, I suppose. And it was unusual just for a goal like that to win. But when it went in, they just really kicked on. So again, the next day will really show where they're at. Because Cashel are a nice young team. They've county players all over the field from the goals right out, and they won't be shirking away from Nenagh either. And Nenagh have a history of as we say, not lacking consistency. So for Nenagh, it'll be backing it up. For Cashel, it'll be a case of these lads, don't back games up. Let's have a right good crack at them and see. There's no one really expecting Cashel to win this. So if they did, it would put them in some position.
Absolutely, and I guess they got through Mullinahone for a finish 224-24. I suppose Mullinahone are just unlucky this year. Down Michael Dunn, down Jack Shelley. But I suppose they showed that real experience in the it was in the last 5 or 10 minutes that Cashel were able to get through and get through. It's a disappointing one for Mullinahone, but you weren't surprised by they were written off in a lot of camps maybe beforehand, but you were looking in the middle of the second half, Noel, and then they were ahead, and you said, God, they're going to pull one off a big one here. But for Cashel to dig one out, they'll take an awful lot from that as well.
Yeah, they will. Cashel will take a lot from it, and I think Cashel will really relish having a cut at Nenagh in the next round. As for Mullinahone, they were probably looking for the performance, really. I mean, if they were to be targeting the game that they wanted to win, that was probably the one. But I think their performance wasn't a bad one, and they'll take some confidence in that going forward. Now, they meet Sarsfields in the next round, who would sort of traditionally have been a team that Mullinahone wouldn't have beaten too often. In fact, I'd say we're going back to the county final of 2002 or 3, was it? Whatever that was back there. Yeah, back that far when Mullinahone last beat them in a county championship game, and that was the one to win, of course, the county final. But I think a lot has changed in that time too. There's nobody still playing. But look, Mullinahone, I think one thing that you'll always get with Mullinahone, they'll be fully committed and they'll give it everything. Now, Sarsfields played them in the championship last year over in Cashel, and they had a big lead up, and slowly but surely Mullinahone chipped that lead back right down to not within dangerous territory for Sarsfields, but they still had to do a bit of work to regain control and see the game out. So, Mullinahone will keep at it. They've a good structure about them. As you say, they'll have been disappointed with the way the game slipped from them against Cashel. But I think overall, when it comes down to it, Kevin Walser will have been happy enough with the performance.
Yeah, I suppose if I'm just go back onto Turles, Noel, Aidan McCormack was a loss, and there was a couple of frees in the game where maybe if he was there, they probably would have been gone over. Like Connor Stakelin probably wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have known him much as a free taker, and he probably had to step in. And they're probably just lacking maybe. I thought Paddy Creedon was pretty good, but maybe sort of a Pat Burke type corner forward that would you say scare the life out of the opposition. They're not missing an awful lot, but there is there's an ingredient missing at the moment.
Yeah, there's something lacking there, all right, Shane, and the Nenagh game was obviously the most recent one, but when you go back to the mid semi-final against Macarkey Borris, Sarsfields should have been fresh for that game. They hadn't had a game, whereas Macarkey had, but there was a spark missing there. I thought that there would be a little bit more to them last weekend, but it didn't surprise me that Nenagh won that game. I didn't see Sarsfields beating them, to be honest with you. And in saying all that, a mistake and a couple of missed frees, and if they're eliminated from the game, it's a draw game and maybe even a Sarsfields victory. I don't think they'll have difficulty in the next round. I think they will beat Mullinahone in that game to get themselves back on track, and then you're going to have a right finish between the two urban teams again in the last round with the Cashel match. But maybe Sarsfields mightn't be too worried at this stage yet. They'll probably say to themselves, in times past and in recent seasons, they may have peaked too soon in the championship, and that maybe by the time they came to the business end of it and they get into Semper Stadium, they might have been going a little bit stale. I also think as well, Shane, and I've said this consistently, that the having the second team so high up in the gradings doesn't help, because you are trying to protect that team in some shape or form as well. Whereas if you have players available to you all the time to move up and down, it makes a big difference. But that's neither here nor there. I think there's about 22 or 3 players used at this stage. So they'll surely pick a senior team out of that number of players,
Absolutely. Just move on to Group 3. This was the first game on Saturday evening in Templemore. Loughmore, Castleiney, last gasp Aidan McGrath point to beat Drum and Inch. I suppose, Dennis, I was watching a lot of this game. I think it got to 2-16 to 14 points. I kind of switched over to the Tumivara. We're coming back against Holycross. I said I'm going to switch over and clubber and catch that. And kind of came back to the other game and said it was level. Callanan had just stuck to. I said, what the hell is after happening here? Because like I thought Loughmore were comfortable without being great, and where, like as Noel said earlier, like Drum it seemed that they threw off the shackles in the last 15, and like they did against Holycross, like they're putting themselves in holes. But it just shows you when they open up, and they even showed it against Borris-Ileigh last year in the group game. Like when they open up, they're really, really good. But like what a winning score! Like that, only Loughmore could conjure up. No. How they even thought of it to work it like that? I can only think they work on something like that in training, and someday it comes up, because like I'd say everybody in the ground, even at the stands, were looking how our drums set up if the long ball comes in. Like nobody was looking at Aidan McGrath 10 yards behind them.
No, exactly. And look, they keep amazing us with things like that. But yeah, it is. Because, the instinct for the teams and even management, you get people back and you mark up and all that. And you're even just watching it back, like, they were fairly well set up, but they maybe didn't press Aidan quick enough. But look, they were trying to mark men and stuff, but it was some score, to be fair. It was a fair match winner and to be remembered for a while. But they're able to do that. Loughmore have that in their locker. They're able to dig out these results when they look next to impossible. And, definitely Drum will be sore, because they did put in a fair shift to get it back to level and just got caught at the death. But look, it'll give them confidence at the same time that the people were writing them off at the start of the season, saying they were definite relegation, contenders, and we'll have to wait and see how the next game goes. But that match will give them confidence, because you're talking about Loughmore, who are among the favourites for the championship most years. So, but they're still be bitterly disappointed to lose out at the death.
Yeah, I suppose no, we know what Loughmore do, and like John McGrath was at he's really on song at the moment. But if you look at Drum, like 7 points to 1 down after 15 minutes, they conceded. What was it, 21 points in the first half against Holycross? It's the first halves that are putting them in difficulty at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, getting a bad start, and then they've got a big gap to make up. And of course, when you are clawing back like that, it takes huge energy to do that, But I suppose if they look at it coldly, and Matthew Buckley no doubt will be analysing it fairly thoroughly ahead of their next game. The majority of people in Tipperary probably wouldn't have expected them to have been as close to Loughmore come game end and to be there in the final straight. So I think they'll have to use that as some sort of a kind of a confidence booster to them going forward. It's a Drum team that has changed quite substantially, Shane, over the last couple of years. Obviously Shamey is still there and still one of the main men in the forward line, but around the field it has changed quite a bit. And they're a team and a club, I suppose, that is managing to bring forward a senior team, an intermediate team. So they're well up there, right? They're intermediates. I think they were beaten by Clonoulty at the weekend as well, but they're competing at high grades in their teams. And I think by the time this championship is out, Drum and Inch could well be right there in a quarter-final mix, depending on how they can get over this Loughmore game. And I think the way they'll get over this Loughmore game is by turning it into a positive. That positive being that they produce something that maybe they mightn't have expected, but certainly I think most people in Tipperary didn't expect.
from a personal point of view, I'd be hoping that I'll be playing a part in trying to make sure that doesn't happen. Europe play drum and inch in the next round. But I suppose to move on, I don't know whether either of you saw Laura's game with JK Brackens on Sunday evening, 228 to 218. Like, I think that the final score, I think, was false, really. Like, this was a cracking game for up to about the 45th minute. Like, I think it was about 218, 217, and just we missed a couple of chances. I think we missed 3 goal chances through the course of the game. I think we won a side net and one from Bonner in the first half and one off the crossbar later on. Okay, I think the game was gone at that stage, but like, I suppose and probably against Brackens, like, they're the worst team, Dennis, when you're trailing and you're pushing on. Like, they will pick you off in the counter attack with that sort of footballing style where they can nearly leave the 3 Ormonds up the field and they'll pick them out. And like, there was a case of like they were hitting everything they hit towards the end seemed to go over the bar. Like, and look, I think from a Brackens point of view, I think coming off the mid-final victory, we're kind of, from our point of view, we're kind of wondering, will their edge be still there? They have the preliminary quarter-final ticket, but how focused will they be? Okay, Laura started well. We were 1-6-3 up after 10 minutes, but I thought overall Brackens were very focused, well drilled, and they were full value for the win.
Yeah, they were definitely impressive towards the end, and definitely in the likes of Andy Ormond now. He's a real. His confidence is through the roof. It's a bit like Sam O'Farrell with Nenagh there. He's so sharp there that, and there's, no matter who you put on him, it's nearly impossible. And then Jamie's outside, swinging him over off the left as well, 5 or 6 off the left, and they have a real good spine, and they're at a good age as well. They're all kind of, Paddy Cadell is there in the backline sweeping, and everyone knows their job, and they have a system of play, and I think they're playing it with their junior team a bit as well. So it's like, it's just next man up and fall in, and like, see, when you could leave the likes of Lyndon Fairbrother off, and he comes in and pops out over a few points. Shane Doyle is playing really well at the moment as well, but overall they're very impressive, and what they have coming behind, are equally as impressive. So, they're going to take a bit of stopping now, I think. I'm definitely one of the teams that I've been impressed with so far anyway, with the mid-championship under their belt. And again, the other day, as you say, from your own point of view, you were well in that. There's probably a few times when maybe shots were on that weren't taken and a few missed chances. And then the Brackens punished Laura then after that. But there was, for a lot of that, and the same with the Tumivara game in the north, it was right there. Just at the very end, you lost out. So I suppose there'll be positives for Laura as well to take out of it going into the next game.
Yeah, it's just I suppose like a lot of things, the moral victory, you can get tired of them after a while, but the performance level has been pretty high, and like we've seen a lot of games, Noel, this weekend, like where the value of the bench, like Lyndon Fairbrother are coming on, like the clubs that are able to bring guys off the bench, like it's a huge help.
It is, like, Linda Fairbrother, as you mentioned, in the Holycross Toom game, James Doyle came off the bench and scored 2 points from Holycross. Conor Mara came off the bench for Toom, scored a couple of points as well at 2, maybe 3 even, I think.
Kilruane and a couple off the bench, Owen Hogan and Michael Furies. Yeah. Like I mean, Dennis would know this better than I would, being manager of a team like that. But like, you're not going to win a game with 15 players anymore. Like, it's just the games have just gone too fast and too physical and all the rest of it. Like, and you have to have fellas who are ready to come on and be on. And look, I think I've made the point before, Shane, when we were talking about Noel McGrath being the sub on the senior team, and there was always the temptation of actually starting him and all that. But your subs on the bench need to be watching what's going on as well, so that they're and be tuned in, so that when they go in, they're straight into the action and not having to kind of feel their way into the game, and that's important. And I suppose management is about knowing what players are capable of doing that as well. And Dennis Kelly might be a great man to come on and get a score, but Shane Brophy mightn't be a great man to come on and get a score. He might need to be starting. Do you know what I mean? So that's the art of management, is knowing the players you have at your disposal and knowing who can do what job. And certainly from what we were seeing over the course of last weekend and the weekend before, it's a case of bringing in your bench to see the ship home. Absolutely. And moving on to, I should say, Brackens and Loughmore, that's the standout game in round 2 on Sunday week, and Temple Toohey and the TG Cahir cameras are coming down as well. So I'm sure that'll draw a lot of eyeballs, and that'll be a key game in that group. Moving on to Group 4, Mike Harkey Borris 124, Roscrea 118. Probably the result probably we expected. We got Roscrea with a better performance. I suppose that was pretty easy because they couldn't be much worse than they were against Kiladangan. So look, they'd be pretty happy. Look, they've improved, and I think there's more improvement in them again. I suppose from their point of view, before we talk, when Bill Flanagan gets sent off about 15 minutes to go, there was only 4 points in it, and it was Mike Harkey who put the foot down, and away went. It was Roscrea would probably feel, God, there was an opportunity there, and we just didn't kick on there. Like there was a great opening there to claw that one back, and it didn't happen. It was Mike Harkey who actually found the extra gear.
Yeah, that can sometimes happen when you go a man up. Everyone's looking around to thinking someone else is going to do it. Whereas the team with the man down have no choice, only to go all out, and I'd say that's what happened there. But yeah, you'd have to be positive from Roscrea point of view that it didn't look good from against Kiladangan. They looked off the pace, but that's a better performance now. But again, it's not going to get easy in this group. There's going to be another big tussle the next day, but they'll definitely take something out of that defeat. Again, McCarthy, they're one of them teams. They're getting the job done. They bounce back after losing the mid-final, and they have a win under their belt, so they'll be happy enough going forward. But I suppose they still have a bit of work to do, but they're going the right direction. And this group is going to go down to the wire. It's going to be a tight one.
Yeah, I suppose for Mike Harkey, Noel, I suppose they would have been bitterly disappointed to lose the mid-final, and I suppose there would have been maybe a case of I suppose a little bit of disappointment coming in on a low, and I suppose just getting through the game, they would have been pretty pleased too. And I suppose the only, Jack Hayes, 5 points in play. He's playing great stuff at the moment. Max Hackett was able to start, so to getting more minutes into his legs, to shook up the team. Kyle Shelley started from the bench. Joe Egan only started from the bench. I think he has trouble maybe playing too many games continuously, so I suppose they're trying to manage him. And I suppose the big thing for maybe Mike Harkey is the fact that Bill Flanagan probably there's a bit of a needless red card, and he's going to miss the Kilruane game, and he's a big physical presence. He's an eye for a goal. He got a cracking goal in the game as well. So that could be very, very, that could be costly now. That the more than anything that he'll be missing the next day, assuming he doesn't win an appeal if they do go down that road.
Yeah, because every club wants to have all their players available, Shane, and injury is one thing that happens, but to pick up a red card like that is another thing. And Toom will feel the same way about Conor O'Mara, I suppose, to be missing him for the next game as well. But as for McCarthy, yeah, they were disappointed, and bitterly disappointed not to win the mid-final. They hadn't won one since 1982, and there was all that kind of external pressure there, massive crowd in Borland for the mid-final, and a fair whack of them coming just over the road from McCarthy, for that game. So to lose that game was a bit of a blow to them, because I suppose it was kind of almost written in the stars that they would win it, but it wasn't on the score sheet when the tallies were added up at the end of them. Brackens came through, so you're back out then a week later, and it's about getting the heads right and just getting through the game, which is what they did. You would say, and in fairness to Roscrea, I saw that game, I covered that game, the Kiladangan Roscrea game, and I feared for Roscrea at that time. I thought that they were at a really, really low ebb, but they certainly picked it up big time in a couple of weeks, and they'll need to do the same again now to plough on again. They might be happy enough to have picked it up, but there is still another couple of notches needed to get up there, and it's going to be a challenge for them, but they're moving in the right direction, you would think.
Yeah, and Dennis, would you think that maybe, I don't know, maybe your son Jerry plays a Borris-Ileigh, are they coming into that match at Borris-Ileigh the next day maybe in a better place? Because okay, they've played better. Like Borris-Ileigh, I thought, in the 3 matches we've seen so far this year, we haven't really seen them play to their potential. And I suppose maybe the way they fell away, maybe towards the end of the Kilruane game last weekend, I think it was 7 points without reply Kilruane got for a finish. It's kind of, I say it's probably a Borris-Ileigh team we're waiting to, maybe, even though they got to a North final, we're waiting to see them maybe show their full best at the moment.
Yeah, look, you're waiting for them to spark, I suppose, up front, because they have huge talent, at their disposal there. They probably, they went through the league, and I think they won the league there against Brackens in the final. And they were playing some nice hurling and nice patterns, But I suppose sometimes you can get players back then, and it doesn't maybe fit. The system starts to choke a little bit again. But if they can get it right, and get everyone sparking, it could be very dangerous. But it'll have to happen shortly now, because Roscrea, Borris-Ileigh, there's great rivalry there from years gone by, and regardless of what form you're in, when there's rivalry between two teams, it can, form can go out the window a little bit. Right, Borris will be going in as fairly hot favourites, but Roscrea won't mind that, and anytime they go head to head with Borris, they give it a good account of themselves. So Borris need to find that final, that there's a few pieces of that jigsaw still missing, but they're at the same time. The other day, they was a 13 or 14 or 15 wides or something like that. That was costly for them, and a lot of them wides came at a time when they were pushing on with the wind at their back, and could have finished that game out. So again, the scoreline probably flatters Kilruane in that a lot of them scores came near the end when it was just Borris had thrown everything at it. Maybe a bit of frustration that they didn't get their scores, and then Kilruane just got them on the counter and picked them off, and with a few area balls and things like that. So there's huge lessons for both sides after that game.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, from a Borris-Ileigh point of view, they're hoping to get Dan McCormick back and Seamus Burke has to come back, and we don't know whether Brendan might make an appearance some page of the year. And I suppose you think they're probably still trying to knit the balance of the team together. Like Tom Delaney's the centre back, but could Dan be a better centre back? Could Tom be needed further up the field? It's like everything, and it's what's trying to find that balance. And you look at Kilruane, I suppose off the fact that they lost to Borris-Ileigh 10 days earlier in the North semi-final, I'd say they were primed for this one, and they're moving nicely. They're developing a panel like Michael Cleary came off the bench. Shane Cleary, young lads like Jack Peters was able to start there. They don't overly complicate their style of hurling. It's very, very direct, and it's typical Kilruane hurling. Get it from A to B as fast as possible. They have two big guys at the edge of the square, and Niall O'Mara is playing great hurling at the moment. I thought Jerome Cahill was really coming back to his best form last weekend. So they're okay. They're I think they can be pretty happy with their early few weeks at the championship. Yeah,
and I think they didn't have Craig Morgan for the first game against Borris-Ileigh, if my memory serves me. So he's obviously back in the team, and a huge part of their team, comes back in with bringing a lot of confidence as well, as an All-Ireland medal winner again. People tend to forget that Kilruane were county champions 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago. Was it? It's very recent. And a lot of those guys have county medals, and the year after it didn't work out for them, but they've been thereabouts. And as you mentioned, Shane, they have a lot of young fellas coming into the team as well. And if they can stay in the championship until you get to the kind of quarter-final stage and you get into Semper Stadium where there's plenty of space and all that, that's where the young guys and the guys with pace in the team really come into their own. Right, the fellas who maybe might be struggling for pace might prefer that they'd all be played in other grounds. But from an attacking perspective, Semper Stadium is the place to be. And Kilruane will take a bit of stopping. They have a style of play which is most effective. It's not. It mightn't be maybe the most spectacular style of play. If you take them, let's say, as opposed to the other black and white team in the championship, JK Brackens, they play totally different styles of play. Brackens would be very flamboyant, kind of hurling, all energy and all that. Kilruane would be very different, but equally as effective. So I think Kilruane can certainly get to the next stage if they keep themselves going the way they're going.
Absolutely, and you think as the championship goes on, the pitches will be getting a little slower, and that's when a couple of the big men will come into their own as well.
Yeah.
So like what works now is something it might work in October, like or something like that. So like no, it was a very, very good weekend of hurling in the senior championship. And moving on to Premier Intermediate, I'll just go through the scores because we're running out of show time here. Group 1, Gorton Hoogland Gould 217, Mine Temple 2 118, Turtle Sarsfields 319, Sean Tracy's 118, Orlando Dwella 122, Silver Mines 217, Irog and McCarthy 222, Temple Derry 316, Ballina 316, Burgess 21 points, Moneygall 115, Upper Strumban 18 points a draw. Group 4, Carrick Swan 118, Clonakilty 16 points, Killanall 124, St Mary's 11 points. Just a couple of things to pick out from that. I suppose Ballina beat Burgess for the second time in 5 days, as did Gorton Who over Mine Temple too, but this was an awful lot closer, and controversy in this game too. Mine Temple 2 probably felt maybe a big, maybe off the ball call, maybe after they got a goal, didn't go ahead, and maybe they could have nicked it. But I suppose from Mine Temple 2, his point of view, they went out and showed that their mid-final performance wasn't them. Maybe the fact it was their third game in maybe in the space of maybe 8 days, maybe that's what caught up with them. But like I suppose that rivalry element of Gorton Who, like they were going to save face and did that and more, just didn't get the result.
Yeah, that's it, Shane. I mean, I think most people would have been quite probably shocked at the mid-final result. Big crowd there again in early for the senior game, and it was a bit of a damn squib really, because Gorton Who were so far in front. Mine were never going to let that happen again. Parochial rivalry and neighbourly rivalry and all that was never going to allow them to do that, and they came with a lot the last day. Yeah, as you say, they'll probably be disappointed that they didn't get more out or get something out of the game, but they will take a lot of sort of I suppose positives from the fact that they were able to get the show back on the road, and they need to take that forward now again, which I've no doubt they will.
Yeah, moving on to Group 2, like I was in Kilcommon, Irog and McCarthy against Temple Derry. This is a terrific game, brilliant second half, really to and fro, and like it, Sean Ryan, the Temple Derry Sean Ryan on one side got 1-3 from play, but he assisted in so much. Derek Kelly, like he's a really classy player. Like I hope he gets to show the best of himself maybe going forward. I know he has a bit of a knee problem, but God, he's a classy player. We got 1-6, and Aidan Griffin, brilliant last 15 minutes of that one. Like it just got them over the line. A really good contest there, and I know both the saw Borris-Ileigh get past Silver Mines 122 to 217. Probably deserved win for Borris-Ileigh, but just maybe a game or maybe stuff that went on off the field, maybe at halftime, at full time, maybe have taken the headlines rather being a really good contest. No.
Yeah, and that's a pity, Shane, because it was a really good contest, and I thought Silver Mines, were really up for the game, and while Borris-Ileigh have kind of in control for most of it, kind of kept their nose in front all the time, but Silver Mines kept coming. Obviously the incidents that happened just at the half-time whistle and at the full-time whistle were nasty and not something that we want to see, but in the course of the match itself, the exchanges were very decently. The two teams went about them in a very decent way. Borris-Ileigh had Gerard O'Dwyer, the centre back, sent off with about maybe 10-12 minutes to go for 2 yellow cards. Like there wasn't anything majorly malicious in either of them, but there were 2 yellow cards at the same time, so off he went. And maybe people might be inclined to think when they hear of big rows at the end of the match and at half time, and then a player sent off that it had something to do. It hadn't really. There were kind of different incidents altogether, to be fair to the chap. But Borris-Ileigh, I thought, looked good now, Shane. I thought like the Tossie Ryan there as well, at corner forward, scored 5 points in play in the second half. Fine player, Seamus Leahy at full forward, still operating very, very well for them. They have a decent team. Brian O'Dwyer at wing forward, Charlie Ryan middle of the field. They're strong. Dylan Fogey, wing back, started well, kind of out of the game a little bit. But then obviously for Silver Mines, Jason Ford was the main man, from play and from frees and from sideline cuts even as well, But yeah, a good win for Borris-Ileigh, I would say, and one that they'll be very happy with.
Yeah, just another result I thought with Ballina after winning the North Championship. I thought maybe and that would have been probably their biggest ever success. Like maybe they could have been vulnerable against Burgess, but no, like they came back and won by 4 points. Just then it's Upper Church and Ban, Drum and Moneygall, 115 to 18 points. They're struggling to get things going a bit this year. Maybe, like Noel said earlier, maybe they're going to try and time their run and maybe try and peak at the latter end. But they probably haven't. And after losing the Mine Temple 2 in the mid, they would actually prefer to have hit the ground running a little better. But there's still an awful lot of experience and quality in that team to pick things up.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a tough couple of years for them there now, because when they came down from senior level, everyone was saying they're going to bounce straight back up. But I think the Premier Intermediate is the most competitive nearly of all the divisions. That it's you're not going to bounce back up unless you're really doing your stuff. So again, look at I think Moneygall got one at the end, or Upper Church got one at the end to level it up with Moneygall to get the draw. So they'll be happy to get a point out of it when it could have been worse. But again, that's a fierce competitive group. As you say, Ballina did well to win 2 on the bounce against Burgess, and they're moving nicely. They're playing a nice style of hurling as well. But yeah, it's not going all the way of Upper Church at the minute. But again, look at if they have the long term in view, that they'll be hoping that they can improve match on match, and they will need to improve to have a chance in this championship.
Absolutely. And just in Group 4, Dennis, you were previously involved with Clonakilty. Like they were planning a big upset at half time. I think they were 12-6 or 11-6 up on Carrick Swan, but I think the Swan had a big win in the second half and came back and won by 5. But I think Clonakilty would be looking at performance and thinking, okay, if we bring that level into, like, say, Mary's, like, God, that was a very, very poor second half, only 1 point in the second half against Killanall. And you could Killanall, I thought they were very poor in the South final against the Swan, but a week later they come out and fire a big win over St. Mary's. So like that's a group. It's maybe the Swan are the consistent one, but it's hard to know what the other 3 teams can bring on a different day.
Yeah, look at Clonakilty. You'll take huge encouragement from that. Speaking to some of the lads there, it looked good from at halftime. That wind was strong. But again, Swan are probably one of the front runners in that division there, and to keep them so close to them, they'll take huge encouragement. And as you say, Mary's, they did struggle. 11 points won't win too many matches.
11 points in club hurling. It's like even if maybe you're struggling, 11 points is a poor return.
Yeah, definitely. That's a match. Unless now Mary's can be hot and cold as well. So if they get their house in order, that'll be an interesting game between themselves and Clonakilty. But if they don't, Clonakilty will definitely punish, because they are consistent in their performances, and they have a nice bit of experience through their panel, and if they smell blood, they'll go for it. So that'll be an interesting one. But look, at you hard to predict what St. Mary's are going to do. Very like Killanall. Killanall could have easily players there on paper to win out the championship, but some days they just don't turn up. So they'll take huge positives out of that one. But again, if they can back it up the day after, that'll be the big question.
Yeah, and I'll just go through the scores in Intermediate Championship Group 1. Kappa White 31 points, Portrue 317, Skaheen Rinky 220, Mile Rover 17. Knockavilla, Dunsgate Kickhams 223, Ballingarry 314, Clonoulty Rossmore 216, Drummond 14 points, Group 3, Borris-Ileigh 220, Arravale Rovers 121, Carrick Davins 320, Newport 123, and Group 4, Goal Kilfeacle 325, Ballybacon Grange 15 points, and Kilsheelan and Kilcash 517, Shannon Rovers 213. Just 2 standout results for me, Noel. Great win for Carrick Davins over Newport, but that's Newport relegated from Premier Intermediate last year, lost in the first round in the North now, and lost probably on paper was their probably most winnable game in the group. And it just shows you, if you get on a losing run, it's very, very hard to shake yourselves out. And that's not taking anything away from the Davins, who probably were hurled well in the night, but I suppose that Newport losing was probably as big a headline from that.
Yeah, Lee Mackey.
Point of view.
Yeah, Lee Mackey rolling back the years there for Davins as well in that game. Very, very good, named at midfield. I think we mentioned earlier on there, Shane, that winning is a good habit to get into. But unfortunately, when you get into a losing rut, it can be very difficult to drag yourself out of that too. And sometimes, games that you should be winning, you end up not getting a result out of, and maybe a draw or something like that. And you say, God, we left that behind us. And then you're losing a game that you should have got a draw out of, and things like that. You know what I mean? So Newport appear to be in that bit of a rut at the minute. So their next game is a big one for them now, because lose that and their intermediate championship is gone for the year, really, But I would say Davins would be well pleased with that win.
Yeah, and I suppose just a final one for me, Dennis, Kilsheelan 5-17. They scored 5-8 in the second half against Shannon Rovers, and that's without Mark Keogh. I don't think Barry Keogh played start of that game. The two Freeney boys were seemingly causing awful trouble with their size. Like, you think if Kilsheelan get their best team on the field, I know a lot of people are looking at Kappa White and Golden maybe as the front runners, but like Kilsheelan only lost the final, I think, in 2021, probably fell away the last couple of years, but it looks like they're getting up ahead of steam again.
Yeah, definitely. They seem to be one of the front runners there. They've been knocking on the door certain years, and then maybe they lose lads to travel and things other years, and they have the full panel to play with. But definitely looking at all those results, they were the standout ones, because Shannon Rovers had a good North Championship. They ended up winning the North, if my memory is correct. So again, they'd have been going in full of confidence into that game, and they put him away nicely, Kilsheelan. So yeah, they'd be the front runners from going by results and what you've heard over the last few days. They're definitely flying at the moment, with a few to come back to add to their panel.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and we look forward to round two. The fixtures are out for Friday the 22nd to Sunday the 24th, so some mouth-watering games coming up. Before I wrap up, I'll just go through the football fixtures, but I'll allow Dennis and Noel to slip away. So thank you for your time, and sure we'll speak to you again soon on Tipp Cast. Dennis Kelly and Noel London, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
And I'll let the boys away there, and I'll just go through the football fixtures for the weekend. I suppose starting in Friday night, Loughmore Castellini up against Kiladangan. That's in Littleton at 7:30. And the two games on Saturday, both at 7:00. It's Ardfinnan against Clonmel Commercials. That's in Care at 7. And at the same time in Temple-Toohey, it's Ballina up against Grange Moke or Ballineal. And there's 4 senior football games on Sunday. Both Group 1 games are 1:30 is the game between Kilsheelan, Cash and Care and Feathert, and then at 3:30 in Clonmel Sportsfield, it's Ballyporeen against Aherlow. At the same time in Group 3, it's Arravale Rovers against JK Brackens. That's in Cashel at 3:30. While at earlier a time of 12:00, it's Mile Rovers against Upper Trustram Band. So this weekend, big weekend of football, and then you go through the intermediate and Premier Junior Championships, and also a raft of probably junior hurling and football championship games through the weekend as well. So for all those who maybe think that with the intra-county season closed, that there's not much going on, you beg to differ. I believe that the attendances at the club at the county championship games last weekend were 20% up on the first round of last year. Okay, that we're coming in on a high after winning on All Ireland, but just shows you the demand there is. And like you say, 20% up, and you put all the figures together of all the people at the games, you're probably talking thousands, maybe up to 10-12,000 people between all the venues from senior right down to junior. Like that's massive numbers, and you multiply that by 32 counties. Like there's the club game is in rude health at the moment. So that is about it for a busy Tipp Cast. My thanks once again to Dennis Kelly and to Noel Dunn. We'll be back next week, review the round one of football and look ahead to round 2 of the County Hurling Championships. Bye for now.